Are questions like where do you get your ideas hard to answer?
Yeah, because they come from everywhere. Ravenous came from, I was reading The Thin Man. And there's midway through the book, there's 2 pages about Alfred Packard, this guy who was a cannibal in Colorado. And I was reading that, and I thought, there is a sort of an adventure story to tell there, and I never finished reading The Thin Man. Then that sort of just sparked.
Now, Ravenous was one of those scripts that didn't it make a few best unproduced screenplay lists before it got produced? Like that was a very talked about writing sample around town. Did you get a lot of meetings off that?
Yeah, I got a lot of that and Best Laid Plans sort of opened doors for me, and it's hard to tell when you're in those meetings or doing interviews with executives and producers whether they're lying to you to your face. So if you say, "Oh, that was a really famously great script," I have no idea.
Have you been lied to openly and busted people on it? Like, do executives actually think they can get away with stuff like that?
One meeting I remember where I'd just done a sort of a polish on a script on an original, and the executive said, "Well, I think this, like, you still haven't gotten the emotionalism of this, the emotion right in this." I said, "Well, this is what I did in this draft, and can you tell me whether, like, what is it about that fails or succeeds, or what else I need to do?" And the executive said, "Well, I didn't really read the draft as closely as I should have. Let me go back to it." And basically, like, in the meetings, copped to not having read it, but having gotten notes from a junior executive.
This executive made a choice not to say when you came in the room, I should have read it. I didn't have time to read it. Here are some
he
notes.
was calling me to the woodshed to say this needs to be better.
He gave you a phony note,
and then he actually had no knowledge of what was different.
Now, does an experience like that color you on just the notes thing in general, or do you still kind of like?
I knew he was a cocksucker going into the meeting. I mean that's why I give my scripts to Scott Frank and Richard Ravenous, is because they're not treating me politically because they have no reason to. They can actually, and they have, for me, the integrity and the authority to say this sucks, and from them I'll know it's true, and not just some. Because there are a lot of things, and you would know better than I, that inform why projects go ahead other than their creative merits or even commercial merits at times, political relationships and
star attachments, which sometimes aren't. It used to be in the oldie days. Studio heads could actually stop a star from making a bad movie or the wrong choice, and now, I know from my days as an executive, if a star said, "I'll do it," even if you were like not so sure about the material, you feel that desire to have a movie for a release date, and you just kind of hope for the best.
Yeah, and I mean, for your job, you're right to do it. Maybe the problem is because I don't know if anybody looks at any position as long term anymore. I mean, what's the
half-life
of a studio executive now?
I was at New Line for 20 years. For the studios now, if you're a head of production for more than 4 or 5 years, for 2 tours of duty, it's a big thing. You're doing a great job.
I think that there's a new ethical kind of paradigm in Hollywood called "fuck you" too.
That gets back to rewriting. I mean, when you were doing the rewriting, did you ever talk to the original writer or leave that up to the studio? How does that work?
Well, if you're rewriting another screenwriter, I think it's good etiquette at least to call him and make sure that he's not getting screwed.
So writers instinctually will do something nicer for people than almost anybody else in the business will do.
Some. I think it always just depends on the person, not necessarily the job. But I don't think I treated at the get-go Eric Garcia, the author of Matchstick Men, very well because I just didn't talk to him. I wanted to be
your own voice.
Yeah, mercenary with the script, and therefore I didn't want to feel like I'm going to piss him off, and so I just stayed away. Whereas there are some scripts where I've rewritten where I tried to where I really sort of respect what's been done before me, and so try not to piss all over the previous writer.
Now, conversely, have you ever been rewritten?
Yeah, sometimes happily, or usually on something where I come in for a couple of weeks and I'm not the first writer and I'm not going to be the last, and the guy who's after me isn't going to be the last either. And there's something liberating about not writing something that's not yours. In some of the weeklies I've done, where it's just about getting something that will work and not necessarily being precious about it at all. And then I've been rewritten a couple of times on things that are very precious to me, and 5 months of drinking didn't help,
Right.
didn't help much. But I think the 6th month, that did it.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Have you had an original taken away from you in terms of another voice being put on it, or writing, or?
Yeah, I'll use an early example. On Best Laid Plans, which is primarily a movie about the main character during the course of the story, whores out his girlfriend to sleep with a friend of his so that he can con that guy out of a possession. And at the end of the script, all the plans have sort of gone awry. The best laid plans. and
Clever.
and the girl sort of turns to the protagonist and says, "We're through," and walks away from him, sort of, which is,
Right.
I think, sort of was the morally appropriate ending. And
Right.
even though he's not a bad guy. Anyway, the movie gets made. I don't think it's very good from the opening credits on.
When did you know that it was going in a direction that you wouldn't have chosen if you were directing it, or that you didn't see when you wrote it? Like, at what point in the process did you know the ship was sinking?
God, it's tough to tell because it was actually, that was being shot while Ravenous was being shot.
Okay, so you weren't there.
And one of them was in Bakersfield, California, and the other one was in Prague. And
That's a hell of a commute.
And Ravenous had fired a director 2 weeks in, and everything was going smoothly on Best Laid Plans. Unfortunately, it was sort of going so smoothly because it was like
Right.
it was turning into a late night Cinemax movie. Anyway, so then I finally saw the movie, and there was one sequence which is supposed to take place in a car with two characters, and they get carjacked, but it's a surprise. There's a window that gets smashed, and they get pulled out, and it's supposed to be this big shocking moment. But instead, it was sort of like done in this long, cool tracking shot in which you see the car, and then over ADR, the guy is saying, "Wait, someone's coming," and the carjacking is like done from a distance. I thought,
Yeah.
something got missed here. Anyway.
Is that when you decided you wanted to be a director, or did you?
I wanted to, but before I realized how important it was
Right.
at that point.
Important because it's hard to turn over things and lose control of them.
Yeah, everything gets rewritten,
Yeah.
and sometimes they get by a director, and at every stage the composer comes in and rewrites it. It's not necessarily what you had in
Right.
mind, but sometimes that improves your work. Ridley Scott improved my work and brought a whole visual sense to it that I never would have brought,
Right.
and therefore happy because of it. So the ending of Best Laid Plans. The movie's no good. They test it. It doesn't test very well. They say we need a happy ending on this, and I say you can't do it. And they say thank you for coming. And they call somebody up and say, how would you like 2 free tickets to the premiere of the new Star Wars, which is this is the first of the new series?
Right.
And they said, yeah, all right, I'll do a day. And so there's
But now they're giving out graft and gifts instead
Yeah.
of even paying for people.
And so there's a happy ending on that, and that was painful because it was something that had started with me, and I'd
Right.
given it to the producers in the studio, and then all of a sudden everybody was at the party but me, and that's happened one at a time, which was painful too.
When you're in charge, at least of your script, until it gets handed off to producers or director or executives, does your own rewriting process? Do you find that you refine as you go and you make things better with draft after draft after draft, or are you pretty much like you kick out the first draft and then it's that until you get a director and a producer and a actor?
I think all scripts can be improved upon. There's the risk of while you're improving upon them
Right.
that you're doing the reverse, and I think the responsibility of the writer is to sort of be the monitor of making sure the good ideas get in, and bad ideas stay out, and from whether they're from an executive, a director, or a star. It helps when you have a powerful director who, as Ridley is,
Right.
who also really has a very good sense of. He can listen and sort of weed out the good from the bad, and is also very. You can,
Right.
for as much success as he's had, you can have a conversation with him and make a case, and he can put ego or whatever aside and sort of figure out whether you're full of shit or not. So it's helpful to have somebody as strong and also secure with their own talents.
What's the last screenplay you wrote? Literally, like the last one you worked on.
It's an original movie that got made, and I don't know if my name will be on it at the end of the day. But it was interesting because it was the most autobiographical thing I've written, and something akin to what happened on Best Laid Plans happened on it. It just didn't happen about the ending. It happened about the whole movie.
Is this, rumor has it?
It is, yeah.
And this was the thing you wrote for yourself to direct?
Wrote for myself to direct. Sort of got the thing going with basically my first choice of cast, and everything was it had like all the toys just the way I wanted
Right.
them, and then sort of got yanked off it without a whole lot of warning or let's just say stated reason. Nobody looked at the footage cut together before I got canned. So.
Wow.
So it was a pretty like a hurtful experience, but I think will probably, hopefully down the line, be a constructive one as far as learning, being more politically, if not politically adept, but sensitive to torpedoes in the water.
Now, at what stage in the process was the film in when the change was made?
I was just finished the third week of shooting it. So we were like about a quarter done with shooting. And there had been like, it wasn't necessarily an easy shoot, but we weren't behind or over budget or anything. To some degree there was sort of a perfect storm. There were some elements that were unforeseeable. And then there were also just there was some bad blood that kind of had to get let.
Is that a big concern for new directors, certainly writers turn director? Are you just at the mercy of events that are bigger than you, and you don't know until it's too late, kind of a thing?
Yeah, I mean, it turned out I didn't think I was at the mercy as much as I was. The reason I thought that I was okay turned out to be actually the reason I was not okay. And I think in the aftermath, people said, "Well, it was you were making a $40 million movie the first time out. It was too much money, and it got people nervous." It's like, Gary Ross made his first movie for about that. I think there are a lot of first-timers who've done fine with that much money. It wasn't really, I think, a budgetary issue. It was sort of more about political relationships, and there were a couple of sort of bigger fish in the pond, much bigger fish in the pond than me.
Can a writer do anything to safeguard against that?
Not sell your work. And I mean, there are two movies I'd rather have unmade than have them out there as they are.
Or I guess if you had, like, for example, if Ridley Scott, to return the favor to you for your screenplay, produced your movie and was your muscle between you and the forces of whatever. Yeah. That's, I guess, one way writers can approach, at least trying to like safeguard a little bit.
That was the theory on mine. It just it wasn't Ridley Scott. Okay. That was the problem. I think there's probably to some degree it's a bad idea to have a director as your producer, because if you're not doing it the way they would direct it,
you have a director leaning over your shoulder.
You have somebody over your shoulder.
How different is the first screenplay you ever wrote to that last screenplay you wrote? Like, what do you think has been the most progress in just in terms of your art or the types of stories you want to tell?
I think they become increasingly less about other movies.
Do you think you have to write a lot of bad screenplays before you write the first great one? Or can you be great right out of the box?
I think you could. I mean, you could sit down on a typewriter today and type for 6 hours, and maybe like there'd be a sensational script. But I would be skeptical of that. I think it takes a lot of practice, and I think the mistake. I think you have to have the ambition when you sit down to write of this will be a movie, and not just say, oh, I'm going to write the script so it can be bad and get it out of the way. I think in writing a first draft, you should never feel like, oh, this is what's going to be read. You should feel free enough to write badly, and then don't let anybody read it and go back and fix it up. But every time I sat down, when I was in college and wrote two scripts, I thought, I'm gonna be in the
Fat City
before I graduate, and then I'll just go out there and I'll have a deal. And then you're got Gabriel Byrne's boxers and
the best laid plans.
Yes.
Do you know at this point in your career what the best thing you've written is to yourself? Not final product or produced movie, but what you feel is like that's the best screenplay I've ever written.
I don't really have a favorite, I think. I mean, I guess the appropriate answer would be, it was whatever the last thing I wrote was. But
we know how that turned out.
but also I'm not sure. I'm not really sure if that's that much better. I mean, I have prouder ownership in a way of Ravenous than I have of Ocean's 11, because Ravenous was purely original. And though I think I would say probably Matchstick Men I would say is maybe a better film than Ocean's 11, and therefore probably what I would perceive as my best produced work, and certainly the best experience I've had. Ocean's 11 might actually be more from me than Matchstick. So it gets mixed up based on how much proprietary feeling you have about it.
How disciplined are you when you're writing at home? Are you one of these guys who has a set routine and you write from this hour to that hour?
Oh, I should. but I screw it up constantly. And that's why I think I'm not more prolific, is because, and a little bit of it is lazy, but a lot of it is there are a lot of diversions when you're working in Hollywood, when you're getting paid for it. First of all, there's money as a diversion, because when I was starting out, there wasn't the absolute need of I won't be able to pay rent without I could not stop writing for a couple years and I'd be okay. Plus, there's the phone and sort of that, as much as I think writing more than any other aspect of the industry is as close to a meritocracy as you can get. Meaning, if you don't have it on the page, as wonderful you are as you might be in a room, you're not going to cut it. Whereas there are some directors I know who've just been so charming and keep their relationship strong enough that they'll kind of perpetually work.
Now, do you write to music? Do you have any rituals that?
I think I listen. I try to get into a genre of music. For Ravenous was written to Bernard Herrmann and Jerry Goldsmith horror scores.
Oh, great score! Bernard Herrmann's such a great composer.
Yeah.
Do you mind the process of pitching? Like, I imagine now that you've had all these produced screenplays, you don't have to write a spec if you don't want to. Are you comfortable just going to studios and pitching ideas, or is that not a great process?
I'm fine doing it. It's not my favorite part of the gig, and I try to be as brief as possible. I think you try to go in there and give them a sense of
what the movie's going to be,
and what they can tell their sort of higher ups,
right?
And then what they can sort of say, this is how we sell it, or this is why it's commercial, and then if sort of avoid getting into the finer points, because in case you want to ditch them later,
right?
So they don't read the script and say, but you pitched this wonderful scene about the sofa factory.
I know when I was at New Line, I worked with a lot of first-time directors, whether they were writer-turned-directors or producer-turned-directors or actor-turned-directors. Do you think, though, that for the most part there's a skepticism of people coming in to direct from different mediums, from the writing or the producing or the acting? Is that something that's just built into the system, or is it different every studio?
Well, I'm curious what you think about it. I mean, having a writer or an actor step up to directing.
I think if it's a first-time director, I think that it's new. Period. Whether it's an actor, whether it's a barber, whether it's a video store clerk, whether it's a writer or producer. It's a first-timer's a first-timer, but I've noticed in the industry sometimes there's a hesitancy to take a shot or take a chance on.
Well, I think when you come from a different field, you have to force them into it. Meaning you have to have a script that they won't be able to have unless.
So the script becomes your leverage.
Like Darabont was with Shawshank. Or I think if you're an actor, you have to have the leverage of either
getting other actors maybe, or being a movie star. I guess.
Or being a movie star, in which if you want to make movies with me, you got to give me this.
Do you think screenwriters make better directors than people from other that come into it from other careers?
Like Billy Wilder started as a screenwriter.
Coppola started as a screenwriter.
Coppola started as a screenwriter. Cameron Crowe. I would rather see a movie, I think, directed by a good screenwriter, say Whit Stillman, Woody Allen, Kevin Smith, than a good director write a script. And, would you hire an actor to write a script? Would you be skeptical about that?
Yes, I would. The thing about directing is, it's the captain of the ship. It's a global job. You have to know a little bit about everything, but you have to be able to deal with actors, be on the floor, talk to department heads, and that's communication skills, which I think a lot of people can have. I always thought that, Quentin Tarantino must have been one hell of a video clerk in that store, because he obviously can communicate a vision, and that's just from watching movies. But I do believe screenwriting is a craft. It is not something everyone can do. The same way not everyone can write a novel or write a concerto or whatever. It's a craft, and it's performed by craftsmen, and it's not something you could just step into.
But if you let an actor write a script, you're only throwing away $200,000. Whereas if you let a writer direct a movie, you could be throwing away $20 million.
The size of the investment always gets weighed against the stress level.
Did you have an emblematic first-timer experience at New Line?
Well, I had two great second-timers. I had David Fincher and Paul Thomas Anderson.
Oh, no.
And I had the Hughes brothers were a great first-time experience. What are you working on next?
Don't know.
You're in between gigs right now?
There's a book I've optioned, which I'm going to try to make my second first film with.
Your second first film.
As a director, the second debut.
Right.
And otherwise, I don't know. I mean, there's that actor theory of you do one for them, do one for you, of the big movie and the little movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that applies to writers as well, because like if you
you
really
mentioned Gary Ross before. I presided over his first time effort at Pleasantville at New Line, and he had that same opinion of like, you know, you want to get your vision out, whether it's a big movie or a small movie. You're a writer turned director. Now you're a director. It's just about the stories you want to tell, and not worry about.
So I'll try to follow the next story that interests me, as opposed to.
Right.
I think I should do something that's about 50.
Right. Leading with the budget.
Yeah.
Well, come back and tell us how that works out.
Oh yeah.
Thank you, Ted. Good luck with everything.
You're fabulous.
And thank all of you. Please check out the other episodes in the series. And remember, it starts with you. The next written by credit could be yours. I'm Mike DeLuca.